Hello, everyone. So I'm just going to be talking about mind maps today and what you're supposed to be putting on those for your quest. So a mind map is really just a tool, a brainstorming tool, usually, not always brainstorming, that maps the thought process that's in your brain. Sometimes we also call them concept maps, and I feel like concept maps is a little bit of a more accurate term when you're trying to show the relationships between concepts. So you would have like a main concept or like main heading kind of in the middle of that. Like if this was a concept map about concept maps, it would have concept maps in the middle, and then it would branch off into subheadings and then even further details. And we are using them in our quest to map our research. So the reason why we're doing that is because it shows relationships between the things that you're finding, and it illuminates connections. And it also is just a really awesome way to visualize your whole journey, your whole quest. And if you use Coggle, which I recommend, Coggle.it, you're able to actually link to your sources right in your mind map. So our mind map also serves as like the documentation of your research instead of something like an annotated bibliography. So I'm going to just use the question, are plants conscious, as my quest, like say that was my question. I misspelled conscious. That would go in the middle. And then I would start to branch off on that based on the research that I find. So maybe I have like a whole like sort of research branch that's delving into how plants communicate. So how plants communicate. And maybe I also started digging into like a definition of what is consciousness. So what is consciousness? Like what defines that? And so far, maybe I only have those two branches. And then I will branch off of that and talk maybe a little bit more about secondary compounds, things like hormones that I learned about for plants communication. So actually, let's just look up plant communication. We're doing like rapid research, like you can imagine this drawn out a little bit further. And I totally trust NCBI. Although I bet that this article is pretty dry. But let's say that I use this as a major resource. So plant signaling and behavior, and I learned about secondary compounds from that. We're just saying that. I didn't actually read it. Obviously, didn't have time. But I can actually put the link to that article into my mind map. So there it is right there. And then when I click on that, it'll come up with that article because maybe I need to go back to it and get some more information. Maybe that's how I'm just sharing what I've learned with other people. Maybe I also learned under how plants communicate about roots and mycelium. Maybe I learned about that in a radio lab called From Tree to Shining Tree, which is a really great radio lab podcast about how plants communicate using mycelium and their roots. So anyway, I would also then link to that podcast in my mind map. I actually want that whole thing to be my link, so it looks better. But and now that I have that link, and then maybe I also find another source that I put there. Maybe I actually do a little bit more research on roots and mycelium, and so I have that's to change the color. Okay, so maybe I have yet another detail, and yet another detail, and yet another detail. I can, again, like if I wanted to differentiate this branch from these other two, I could change this branch color. Oh, no, let's just say green. Oh, I have to update. I don't want to upgrade, so, that's from the outer wheel. So if I choose something from the inner wheel, and then I'm going to make that one blue, and purple. So that way, every time I do a detail under that branch, it shows up as that color. Those would have been green had I made that first branch green originally. Anyway, so that is the goal of the mind map, is to map that research and then to share that out with others. And the way that I share it, I think I have another video on this, but I click share this Coggle. And I can everyone view this diagram? Yes, I need to make it public first, public diagram, just like I would change a Google Doc share setting. Then I'm going to click the embed link. because I actually want to put this directly into my Google site. And I'm not going to pull it up because it's going to take too long. But if you had your Google site up, there's an option to embed. You drag and drop that over. You paste this link into that box, and then the Coggle, the mind map, will actually show up and be interactive. So people could click on the link right from your Google site instead of popping out to Coggle. You could do it that way too. Yeah, and if you're in this or that, maybe your branches are the life cycle processes. So you could have things like manufacturing and transportation and shipping, or that's the same transportation, and use and disposal, right? So those main branches could be life cycle parts instead of, well, it doesn't have to be. That's just an idea. So that's the goal, and that's how you do it. And I hope you enjoy the research process a little bit more. It's a little bit more interactive and visual, and I think there's a lot of really great benefits for using a mind map.